The massive space station floated in the darkness between stars. It was called Nexus Prime, and it was the largest structure ever built by living creatures. Inside its great hall, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in a giant circle. They called themselves the Galaxy Council, and they believed they controlled everything important in the universe. Today, they were bored. Ambassador Velthus stood at the center of the hall. He was tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms. His species, the Alari, were known for their intelligence and their love of politics. He cleared his throat and spoke in a tired voice. "Fellow members of the Council, I bring news from the Outer Rim. The Drekari Empire has chosen its next target for conquest. A small planet called Earth in the Sol system."
Oh.
Nobody seemed interested. A few ambassadors yawned. One was clearly sleeping. Magistrate Orin, who led the council, was very old. His species, the Silathi, could live for thousands of years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched countless worlds burn. Another primitive planet being conquered meant nothing to him. "What level is this civilization?" Orin asked, though he did not really care about the answer. "Level 2, Velthos replied. "They have only recently learned to leave their own planet. They have sent a few machines to nearby worlds, but they cannot travel between stars. They do not know we exist." Orin nodded slowly. "Then this matter does not concern the Council. The Drekari may do as they wish with primitive species. It is their way." The Drekari were feared across the galaxy. They were large creatures, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with thick gray skin like stone and eyes that glowed red in the dark. They had conquered over 200 worlds in the past 1,000 years. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they did not need. No primitive species had ever survived their attacks. Most council members saw this as simply the natural order. Strong species conquered weak ones. It had always been this way. It would always be this way. But in the back of the Great Hall, a young analyst named Thyra raised her hand. She was small, with large silver eyes and delicate wings that folded against her back. Her species, the Veloxi, were known for collecting information. They watched and listened and remembered everything. "Magistrate," she said, her voice soft but clear. "May I speak?" Orin looked at her with little interest. "You may." Thyra walked forward, her wings trembling slightly with nervousness. She had never spoken before the full council, but she had studied Earth for many years. She had listened to their radio signals. She had watched their television broadcasts. She had learned their languages and read their history. And she was afraid. This planet Thyra began, this Earth. It is not like other level 2 worlds. The species that lives there, they call themselves humans. They are different from anything we have seen before. Ambassador Velthus laughed. "Different. They are primitive creatures who still burn fossil fuels and fight wars over invisible lines on maps. What could possibly be different about them?" "That is exactly what concerns me," Thyra said. She pressed a button on her device, and images appeared in the air above the council. They fight wars constantly. Not just against other species, against each other. They have killed hundreds of millions of their own kind in just the past century. The council watched the images with mild curiosity. Tanks rolling across fields. Bombs falling from the sky. Cities burning. Primitive violence, Orin said dismissively. Many young species go through such phases before they mature. But they did not stop there, Thyra continued. Her voice grew more urgent. They created weapons that split atoms. They call them nuclear bombs. A single one of these weapons can destroy an entire city. They have thousands of them, pointed at each other, ready to fire at any moment. This caused some murmuring in the council. Weapons that split atoms were dangerous. Such technology usually came much later in a species' development. They have survived extinction events that would have destroyed any other species, Thyra went on. Disease, war, natural disasters. Each time, they came back stronger. Their entire history is written in blood and survival. They do not give up. They do not surrender. They fight until they win or until they die. Ambassador Velthus shook his head. You are a young analyst. You do not understand. The Drekari have conquered 200 worlds. They have technology 1,000 years more advanced than these humans. Their fleet has 200 warships, each one capable of destroying a continent. It does not matter how violent these creatures are, they cannot fight what they cannot touch. Thyra looked around the room desperately. Please, you must listen. I have studied their transmissions for decades. Their entertainment, their news, their stories. They dream of war with alien invaders. They have imagined it in countless books and films. They have been preparing for this moment without even knowing it. Orin raised a hand, silencing her. Enough. The Dreckery fleet will arrive at Earth within 3 standard days. The humans will surrender, or they will die. Either way, it will be over quickly. We will document this conquest for the archives, as we always do. He turned to the main viewing screen. Activate the long-range sensors. We might as well watch. It has been some time since we witnessed a proper conquest. The screen flickered to life, showing a blue and green planet spinning slowly in space. White clouds covered parts of its surface. It looked peaceful, beautiful, fragile. Thyra returned to her seat, her heart heavy with dread. She looked at the planet on the screen and whispered a word in human language that she had learned from their broadcasts. Around her, the council members settled into their seats. Some ordered drinks. Some continued their private conversations. They expected a quick conquest. A boring afternoon of watching primitives die. None of them understood what was coming in the cold darkness of space. 200 Dreckery warships jumped out of hyperspace and began their approach toward Earth. Their weapons were charged. Their soldiers were ready. They expected no resistance. Commander Draxel stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the small planet growing larger on his screen. He had conquered 16 worlds in his career. This would be the 17th. He expected it to be the easiest. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. On Earth, it was a normal Tuesday. People went to work. Children went to school. Nobody knew that their world was about to change forever, but that peace would not last long, in exactly 47 hours. Humanity would learn that they were not alone in the universe, and the universe would learn that it should have left humanity alone. The Dreckery fleet blocked out the sun, too. 100 massive warships appeared in the sky above the Pacific Ocean. Each one was larger than a city. Covered in weapons and armor, they hung in the air like dark clouds made of metal, and their shadows fell across entire countries. People all over the world stopped what they were doing. They looked up. They took out their phones and started recording. For a few minutes, nobody knew what to think. Some thought it was a movie being filmed. Some thought it was a government experiment. Some prayed, then the message came. Every screen on Earth, every television, every phone, every computer showed the same image. A large creature with gray stone-like skin and glowing red eyes stared into the camera. Its voice was deep and terrible, and somehow it spoke in every language at once. Creatures of Earth, I am Commander Draxel of the Dreckery Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. You have 1 rotation of your world to surrender. Lay down your weapons. Present your leaders to us. Resistance will result in complete destruction. There will be no second warning. The message ended. The screens returned to normal for exactly 3 seconds. The entire human race was silent. Then the panic began. But not everywhere. In Seoul, deep beneath the ground, in a heavily protected military bunker. General Una Park watched the message with cold eyes. She was 52 years old, with short gray hair and a face that showed no fear. She had fought in 3 wars. She had seen terrible things and done terrible things. Nothing surprised her anymore. Around her, officers shouted into phones and typed furiously at computers. Alerts were going out to every military base on the planet. Emergency protocols were activating. The world's governments were trying to contact each other to figure out what to do. Colonel Tai-Ho Kim stood beside her. He was younger, in his early 40s, with the calm face of a man who had seen too much death to be scared of it anymore. He had spent 15 years in special forces, carrying out missions that officially never happened. "General," he said quietly, "what are your orders?" Una Park did not answer immediately. She walked closer to the screen and studied the alien that had just threatened her species. She looked at its eyes, its posture, its expression. She had spent her whole career studying enemies, learning their weaknesses, finding ways to defeat them. This creature, she said slowly, is not afraid of us. Look at how it speaks. It expects us to obey. It has done this many times before. It probably has, Taiho agreed. Those ships are more advanced than anything we have. If the reports are accurate, they have energy shields, plasma weapons, faster than light travel. We cannot match their technology. Yuna turned to face him. There was something dangerous in her eyes. Technology is not everything, Colonel. Tell me, what advantages do we have? Taiho thought for a moment. We know the ground. We have 7 billion people. We have nothing to lose. And one more thing, Yuna said. They do not know us. They think we are weak. They think we will bow. She turned to the room full of panicking officers. Her voice cut through the noise like a knife. Listen to me, all of you. Everyone stopped. Everyone looked at her. I know you are afraid. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. But I want you to understand something. We will not surrender. We will not bow to these creatures. They came to our home. They threatened our families. They expect us to give up without a fight. They are wrong. They have never met humans before. They do not know what we are capable of. For all of our history, we have fought each other. We have killed each other. We have perfected the art of war over thousands of years. Now, for the first time, we have a common enemy. And we will show them what happens when you threaten our world. In the back of the room, Lieutenant Mina Choi raised her hand. She was young, only 26, but she was one of the best communications experts in the military. She had been listening to the alien transmissions since the ships appeared. General, she said, I have been monitoring their communications. They are using an unencrypted frequency. They are not even trying to hide their messages. Why not? Taiho asked. Mina's jaw tightened with anger. Because they think we are too stupid to understand. They are treating us like animals. Yuna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Good, let them think that. What are they saying? They are discussing landing zones. They plan to send ground troops to major cities: New York, Beijing, London, Tokyo, Seoul. They expect immediate surrender. Their commander has ordered his soldiers not to waste ammunition. He says we will give up as soon as we see their true strength. Yuna looked at Taiho. How many nuclear missiles do we have ready to launch? The world total is approximately 12,000. And how long would it take to put every military force on Earth under a single command? Taiho almost laughed. That has never been done before. Countries do not trust each other. The politics alone would take months. We do not have months. We have ours. Yuna picked up a phone. Get me the president, and then get me every world leader who is still alive. Tell them this is not a request. Tell them that if they want their countries to survive, they will do exactly what I say. Within 6 hours, the impossible happened. For the first time in human history, every nation agreed to fight together. Old enemies became allies. Political differences were forgotten. The United Earth Defense Coalition was born, with General Yuna Park as its commander. As the sun set on that first day, the Dreckery landing craft descended through the atmosphere. They expected to find scared civilians and weak soldiers ready to surrender. Instead, they found hell. In Seoul, hidden soldiers opened fire the moment the first Dreckery stepped out of their ships. In New York, snipers shot aliens from rooftops. In London, civilians threw homemade explosives from windows. In Tokyo, subway tunnels became killing grounds, where humans used their knowledge of the terrain to ambush invaders. The Dreckery had never seen anything like it. These creatures were supposed to surrender. They always surrendered. Every primitive species surrendered when they saw Dreckery technology. But humans did not surrender. They fought with guns, with knives, with their bare hands. They fought even when they knew they would die. They fought with a fury that the Dreckery could not understand. By the end of the first day, 3,000 Dreckery soldiers were dead. Commander Draxel stared at the reports in disbelief. 3,000 soldiers lost to a species that could not even travel between stars. On the Galaxy Council station, Far away in space, the observers had stopped talking. They watched the screens with wide eyes. Thyra, the young analyst, stood frozen in shock. "They are fighting back," she whispered. "They are actually fighting back. The battle for Earth had only just begun." The Galaxy Council had stopped eating. They had stopped talking. They had stopped doing anything except watching the screens. 7 days had passed since the invasion began, and Earth was still fighting. Magistrate Orin sat in his chair, unable to move. In his 10,000 years of life, he had watched countless primitive worlds fall to conquerors. Usually it took only a few hours, sometimes a day. The primitives would see the superior technology, understand that resistance was impossible, and surrender. It was logical. It was sensible. It was what any rational species would do, but humans were not rational. On the screens, the Council watched cities burn. The Drekari, frustrated by the unexpected resistance, had begun orbital bombardment. Their massive ships fired beams of pure energy at the planet below, turning entire neighborhoods into ash in seconds. New York was gone. Half of Tokyo was fire. Mumbai was a crater. Hundreds of millions of humans had died in 1 week, and still they fought. "This is madness," Ambassador Velthus whispered. His blue face was pale with shock. "Why do they not surrender? Can they not see that they are losing?" Thyra stood at the viewing screens, tears running down her face. She had studied humans for so long. She had come to respect them, even love them in a way. And now she watched them die. "They know they are losing," she said quietly. "They simply do not care. For humans, surrender is worse than death. They would rather die fighting than live as slaves." "But that is illogical," Velthus protested. "If they surrender, at least some will survive. The Drekari always keeps some of the population alive for labor. This way, they will all die." "You do not understand them," Thyra replied. "I have listened to their stories for years. Their greatest heroes are not those who survived. They are those who fought impossible battles and died rather than give up. They have a word for it: sacrifice. They believe that dying for what you love is the highest honor." Magistrate Orin finally spoke. His voice was old and tired. "I have seen many species in my life. I thought I understood all the ways that sentient creatures behave, but this is something new. Something I do not understand." Meanwhile, on Earth, the fighting continued. In a bunker beneath the ruined city of Busan, Dr. Hejan Lee had not slept in 4 days. He was a physicist, one of the best in the world, and he was working on something that might save his species. 3 days ago, a Drekari scout ship had crashed in the mountains near the city. Korean soldiers had killed the crew and recovered the wreckage. They had brought it to Heijin, along with a simple order: figure out how it works. Heijin had gathered every scientist he could find. They worked day and night, taking the alien technology apart piece by piece, trying to understand it. The ship's systems were complex, but not incomprehensible. Humans had been imagining alien technology in science fiction for 100 years. Some of those ideas turned out to be surprisingly close to reality. On the 4th night, Heijin found what he was looking for. "The shields," he announced to his exhausted team. "They work on a specific energy frequency. If we can match that frequency with an electromagnetic pulse, we can shut them down." His assistant, a young woman named Jiwan, looked up from her computer. "Can we build something like that?" Heijin smiled for the first time in days. "We already have. Nuclear bombs create electromagnetic pulses. We just need to modify them to match the frequency. I call it the sting." On the other side of the world, a different kind of breakthrough was happening. Captain Suri Han was one of the best fighter pilots in the Korean Air Force. Her call sign was Ghost because of her ability to appear where no one expected. Before the invasion, she had flown training missions and felt bored. Now, she was fighting for the survival of her species, and she had never felt more alive. Lieutenant Mina Choi had discovered something important in the alien transmissions. The Drekari shield technology had a weakness. When the shields were hit at a specific angle with enough force, they flickered for exactly 0.3 seconds. In that moment, The ships were vulnerable. It was a tiny window. No normal pilot could hit it. But Story was not a normal pilot. She led a squadron of 12 modified jets into the upper atmosphere, higher than any fighter had ever flown before. The modifications were desperate Textra fuel tanks, stripped-down frames, engines pushed beyond their limits. 3 planes exploded before they even reached altitude, but Story kept climbing. She found a Dreckery cruiser hovering over what used to be San Francisco. It was a massive ship, bristling with weapons, surrounded by smaller fighters. Any sane person would have turned back. Story dove straight toward it. The Dreckery fighters came after her. She dodged their weapons with moves that should have been impossible, pulling turns that almost made her black out. She lost 4 more pilots in the attack, but she kept going at exactly the right moment. She fired every missile she had at exactly the right angle. The shields flickered. The missiles hit. The cruiser exploded on the Galaxy Council Station. The observers gasped as a Dreckery warship, a ship that had conquered worlds, fell from Earth's sky in flames. "That is impossible," Velthus said. "They do not have the technology to damage our ships." "How are they doing this?" Thyra pulled up more information on the screens. Human military history. Thousands of years of battles and wars and strategies. Images of ancient swords and modern missiles. Stories of humans who had fought against impossible odds and won. "They have been preparing for war since before they discovered fire," she explained. "Every generation, they find new ways to kill. They test their weapons on each other constantly. They have turned violence into an art form." She paused, her voice shaking. The Dreckery thought they were attacking primitives. They did not realize they were attacking the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Commander Draxel received the report about his destroyed cruiser and could not believe what he was reading. He had conquered 16 worlds. He had never lost a single ship to a primitive species. Now, these soft pink creatures had destroyed one of his most powerful warships using modified atmospheric vehicles. He gave an order that he had never given before. "Send for reinforcements." Back in the bunker beneath Sol, General Unipark received a message from Dr. Hagen Lee. The weapon was ready. They had one chance to use it. She looked at the map of the world on her wall. So many cities destroyed. So many people dead. But they were still fighting. They were still alive, Colonel Kimchi said. Tejo stepped forward. "Yes, General. I have a mission for you. It is probably suicide. But if it works, we might win this war." Right. Tejo smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. "When do we start?" Outside, the Dreckery ships continued their bombardment. The sky was filled with fire and smoke. The air smelled of ash and death, but humanity was not finished yet, not even close. 3 weeks after the invasion began, Earth was a world of ruins and fire. Half of the great cities were gone. 1 billion people had died. The oceans were filled with debris from fallen ships, both human and alien. The sky was dark with smoke and ash in many places, but the humans were still fighting, and now they were ready to strike back. General Unipark stood in her command bunker. Looking at a holographic map of the world, blue dots showed human forces. Red dots showed Dreckery positions. There were far more red dots than blue, but that was about to change. "The weapon is ready." Dr. Hajon Lee's voice came through the speaker. He was in Busan, 300 kilometers away, standing next to the device he had built. They called it the Sting. It was a modified nuclear bomb designed to release an electromagnetic pulse at exactly the frequency that would disable Dreckery shields. "How large is the effective range?" Una asked. 50 kilometers. Every Dreckery ship within that range will lose shields and power for approximately 3 minutes. 3 minutes, Una repeated. "That is not very long. It is long enough," Hajon replied. "If we hit them hard enough in those 3 minutes, they will not recover," Una nodded. She turned to the officers around her. "You all know the plan. Operation Vengeance begins at dawn. We have one chance at this. If we fail, humanity dies. If we succeed, we live. There is no middle ground." The plan was desperate and dangerous. The sting would be launched into the heart of the Dreckery fleet. When it detonated, it would disable half their ships. At that exact moment, every military force on Earth would attack together. Planes, missiles, ships, soldiers, everything they had left would strike at once. And while the chaos distracted the Dreckery, a small team would infiltrate the enemy command ship and destroy it from the inside. That team was led by Colonel Taiho. He had chosen 12 volunteers to go with him. They came from different countries: Korea, America, Russia, Japan, Brazil, Nigeria. Some were soldiers. Some were engineers. One was a school teacher named Yoonji, who had lost her husband and both children in the Seoul bombardment. She had walked into the military headquarters 3 days later and asked for a weapon. "I do not know how to shoot," she had said. "Teach me." They taught her. She learned fast. Taeho gathered his team in a small room near the launch bay. They called themselves the Ghosts of Earth. None of them expected to come back alive. They had all made peace with death. "You all know what we are about to do," Taeho said. "We are going to fly into an enemy warship, fight through hundreds of alien soldiers, and destroy their reactor core. This will probably kill us. I will not lie to you about that." He looked at each of them. "But if we succeed, we cut off the head of the snake. Without their commander, without their flagship, the Dreckery fleet will fall apart. Our families, our friends, everyone we love, they will live. That is worth dying for." Yeonji spoke up. Her voice was steady. "My family is already dead. I have nothing left to lose. Let's go kill some aliens." The others nodded. There was no more fear in that room, only determination. At dawn, the attack began. The sting launched from a submarine in the Pacific Ocean, arcing up through the atmosphere toward the Dreckery fleet. The aliens detected it immediately and tried to shoot it down. But human fighters swarmed around it, sacrificing themselves to protect the weapon. 17 pilots died in the first 30 seconds. But the sting reached its target. It detonated in the center of the fleet. And for a moment, a new sun appeared in Earth's sky. The electromagnetic pulse spread outward in a sphere of invisible energy. Passing through ship after ship, the effect was immediate. Half the Dreckery fleet went dark. Their shields failed. Their weapons stopped working. Their lights went out. 100 massive warships became helpless, metal boxes floating in space, and humanity struck. Missiles filled the sky like a swarm of angry insects. Nuclear warheads, conventional explosives, everything humanity had left, they slammed into the defenseless ships. Tearing through hull plates that should have been invincible, Captain Sorihan led what remained of her squadron into the battle. She had started with 36 pilots. She had 7 left. They dove through gaps in the enemy formation, firing at weak points, dodging debris. "This is Ghost," she called over the radio. "Engaging enemy carriers. Tell my mother I love her." She destroyed 3 ships in the next 90 seconds. When a Dreckery fighter finally caught up to her, she rammed her plane into it rather than let it stop her. She survived. Barely, her ejection seat carried her down to Earth. With 2 broken legs and a smile on her face, while the battle raged in the sky, Taiho Kim's team approached the command ship. They used a captured Dreckery shuttle that they had spent weeks repairing. The aliens did not notice them in the chaos. They docked on the underside of the flagship and cut their way inside. The interior of the ship was designed for creatures much larger than humans. The hallways were 3 meters tall. The doors were built for giants. But that also meant the Dreckery had trouble fighting in close quarters. Humans, on the other hand, were very good at close quarters. Taiho's team moved through the ship like ghosts. They used explosives to block corridors, trapping enemy soldiers. They used smoke grenades to blind them. They used human speed and flexibility to dodge attacks that should have killed them. 7 team members died before they reached the bridge. Youngji was one of them. She took down 6 Dreckery soldiers with her last grenade, screaming the names of her children as she pulled the pin. When Taiho finally reached the command center, only 4 of his team remained. They burst through the door, firing at everything that moved. Commander Draxel was waiting for them. He was enormous, even for a Drekari. His stone-gray skin was covered in scars from 100 battles. He had a weapon in each of his 4 hands. "You creatures," he growled, in broken human language. "You should have surrendered," Yu Taiho replied, breathing hard, bleeding from a wound in his side. "Should have stayed home." The fight was brutal and short. 2 more of Taiho's team died. But the last human standing, a Russian soldier named Victor, managed to plant an explosive charge on the main reactor core. "Time to go," Victor said, grinning through a bloody mouth. "There's no escape," Draxel snarled. "You will die here," Taiho said. He pressed the detonator. The explosion consumed the bridge. It spread through the ship like fire through paper. The flagship of the Drekari Empire, the terror of 200 worlds, broke apart in Earth's atmosphere, burning like a falling star. On the Galaxy Council station, the observers watched in absolute silence. The Drekari fleet, leaderless and crippled, began to retreat. The remaining ships jumped into hyperspace, fleeing from a planet that should have been an easy conquest. Earth had 1 lieutenant. Mina Choi looked at the radar screens in the bunker. The red dots were disappearing one by one. She could not believe what she was seeing. She whispered, "They are running. The Drekari are running away." General Unipark allowed herself to sit down for the first time in 3 weeks. Tears ran down her face, but she did not wipe them away. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually did it." 800 million humans had died in the invasion. Cities were destroyed. Ecosystems were ruined. It would take generations to rebuild, but humanity had survived, and the universe would never forget what they had done. 6 months passed. Earth slowly healed. The smoke cleared from the skies. The fires stopped burning. People began to rebuild their cities, their homes, their lives. It was not fast, and it was not easy. But humans had never been afraid of hard work. They also began to look up at the stars with new eyes. The Galaxy Council had been watching from the moment. The Drekari fleet retreated. They had seen everything, the battles, the sacrifices, the impossible victory. And they were afraid. Magistrate Oren called an emergency meeting. It was the largest gathering in Council history. Every species sent their most important representatives. The observation galleries were packed with observers from worlds that had never before cared about Council politics. Everyone wanted to see what happened next. "We must address the Earth situation," Oren announced. His ancient voice echoed through the great chamber. "These humans have done something unprecedented. They defeated a Drekari invasion fleet using pre-interstellar technology. We cannot ignore this." Ambassador Velthos stood up. His blue skin looked pale, and his voice trembled slightly. "Ignore it? We should be terrified of it. These creatures are dangerous beyond anything we have encountered. They killed 50,000 Drekari soldiers. They destroyed 47 warships. They refused to surrender even when facing certain death. What do you suggest?" asked a representative from the Krell, a species known for their caution. "Should we attack them ourselves? Finish what the Drekari started." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what that suggestion meant, but everyone was also thinking it, Thyra. The young analyst who had warned the council before the invasion stepped forward. "May I speak?" Oren nodded. Thyra walked to the center of the chamber. She looked different now, older, more confident. The tragedy she had witnessed had changed her. "I have continued monitoring Earth since the battle ended," she said. "I have watched them bury their dead 800 million of them. I have seen their mourning. I have heard their songs of grief and their stories of heroes." She paused, looking around at the gathered representatives. "And I have seen something else. Despite everything, despite the destruction and the death and the suffering, they are not planning revenge. They are not building weapons to attack the galaxy. They are rebuilding schools and hospitals. They are planting trees in the craters left by our observation and Drekari bombs." "That does not mean they are not dangerous," Velthus argued. "Of course they are dangerous," Thyra replied. "They are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. But danger is not the same as evil. They fought because they were attacked. They killed because they had to survive. And now that the battle is over, they are choosing peace. She turned to face Magistrate Oren directly. We have a choice. We can treat them as enemies and live in fear of what they might do. Or we can treat them as equals and discover what they might become. But I warn you, if we choose fear, if we attack them or threaten them, they will fight back. And this time, they will know we exist. They will come looking for us. The chamber was completely silent. 3 days later, a shuttle docked at the Galaxy Council station. It was a human ship, rough, primitive compared to Council technology, but solid and functional. The humans had built it in for months. Using salvaged Dreckery parts and their own desperate ingenuity, the doors opened, and 3 humans stepped out. General Unipark walked in front. She was wearing a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. Her gray hair was pulled back, and her face was calm. Behind her walked Dr. Hajon Lee, the physicist who had created the sting, and beside him was Captain Suri Han. Walking with a slight limp from injuries that had not fully healed, Lieutenant Mina Choi had come to, serving as their translator. She had learned Galactic Common in just a few weeks. Feat that normally took years of study, the council representatives stared at the humans as they walked through the great chamber. These were the creatures who had done the impossible. These were the monsters from the stories that would be told for thousands of years. They looked so small, so fragile, so ordinary. Magistrate Oren rose from his seat. For the first time in 10,000 years, he bowed to representatives of another species. On behalf of the Galaxy Council, he said slowly, I offer humanity our deepest apologies. We watched your world be attacked and did nothing to help. We expected you to fall and did not think to save you. We were wrong. We were arrogant. And we are sorry. General Park studied the ancient creature for a long moment. Every eye in the chamber was on her. Every species was waiting to see what humanity would demand. She could have asked for technology, weapons, power. She could have demanded that the council bow to human authority. She could have threatened them with the same fate as the Dreckery. Instead, she spoke calmly and simply. We do not want your apology. Apologies do not rebuild cities. They do not bring back the dead. What we want is your promise. She looked around the room at all the different species, tall and short, scaled and feathered, humanoid and alien. Promise us that no other civilization will ever be abandoned the way we were. Promise us that when the next primitive world is threatened, you will not simply watch and take notes. Promise us that the strong will protect the weak, not ignore them. She paused, and her voice hardened just slightly. Or next time, we will not stop at defense. We know you exist now. We know where you live, and we will remember who watched us burn. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Magistrate Oren nodded slowly. We accept these terms. The Council will reform its policies regarding pre-contact civilizations. No species will be left unprotected again. After the formal meeting, Thyra approached the human delegation. She had watched them for so many years through screens and recordings. Now, standing close to them, she could see the details she had missed. The lines on General Park's face from years of worry, the slight tremor in Dr. Lee's hands from exhaustion, the fierce, unbroken light in Captain Han's eyes. You could have conquered us, Thyra said softly. Your weapons, your fury, your willingness to die, ... You could have taken revenge on everyone who watched and did nothing. Captain Han smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. We spent our entire history fighting each other. We are tired of war. But we will never be victims. Not for anyone. The Council voted to grant Earth full membership that same day. It was the fastest admission in galactic history. As the human shuttle prepared to leave, General Park took one last look at the gathered representatives of 47 alien species. Some looked at her with fear. Some looked with respect. Some looked with curiosity. One more thing, she said. There is a human tradition when you meet new neighbors. You bring a gift. Dr. Lee stepped forward carrying a small container. Inside were seeds, hundreds of different species of earth plants. For your gardens, he explained. Something to remember us by. It was such a small gesture. Such a simple act of kindness from a species that had every reason to be angry and bitter. That moment was remembered for centuries. In history books across the galaxy, it became known as the gift of seeds, the moment when humanity showed that they could be more than just warriors. As the human shuttle flew away from the station, back toward their healing world, a new saying began to spread through the galaxy. It passed from species to species, from world to world, whispered in 100 different languages. Never attack Earth. The humans do not know how to surrender. And far away, on a blue and green planet that was slowly growing new life in its craters and ruins, 8 billion humans looked up at the stars. They were not afraid. Anymore, they had proven what they were made of, and the universe would never forget.